What's the deal? It's your boy back with another video for that is back with another review of my book, Blackguard the Askari. I've been going through it chapter by chapter, about to do another one while I'm on my patrol. 'Cause I am at work, I'm a hard-working dad out here with all these kids, so I gotta make sure I get my steps and work at the same time. So that's what we're about to do, you know, stay on the grind. And one day, when this book blows up, or one of my other books blows up, I won't have to work anymore. That's the goal. The goal is financial freedom, not to live paycheck to paycheck. But I'm a regular ass dude out here with a regular ass job, trying to make a way. Cause I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger. I was doing a lot of dumb stuff, so now I got to make up for it. But I do love the write. For those of you who are new, welcome to my channel. It's Minor Typos. We talk about storytelling, talk about my books, the type of events I do, writing craft, everything goes down on this channel from a black man's perspective, of course. Because as you can see, I'm a little dark skinned. But on chapter 4, if you haven't seen the prologue through chapters 3, I recommend you go back and watch those. Um, right now, we are going to do. I think I'm one headphone down. Hopefully, this battery lasts the whole video. I might have to do this one over, but we'll see. Chapter 4, Blood in the Storm. I mean, no, that was chapter 3. This is the Wound of Heroes. My bad. Wound of Heroes. I'm still new to the YouTube game. I like to do these off the cuff with as little editing as possible, just my thoughts. I'm going to go over storytelling, the reasons why I do certain things, my type of craft and the way I write, and I'm also going to be reviewing the narrator, the voice actor. And so, with that being said, let's get into it.
4. Wounds of Heroes. I summon weapons out of thin air, wield objects with the power of my mind, and shoot energy from my hands. With each breath I consolidate my will into a single focused point. The more I train to manipulate the boko, the stronger is my connection to the benign, the more powerful I become. Unknown author, 9th day of Floriana.
So, like I said in my other chapters, at the beginning of a chapter, there's a little epitaph or a little quote from a book inside the world of the Blackguard, of the Askari. And so, there are these ones where I left the epitaph as an unknown quote from an unknown author with no book title. And at the end of the book, if you get the clues, it kind of shows you who that unknown author is. But it's still fun to to play around with it, play around with the idea. I wasn't the goal when I first started doing it, but I was like, oh, let me have some fun with it. And essentially, I made these epitaphs because like I had a bunch of notes regarding the world of the story, and I wanted to be able to give some things away without having to use like dialogue or exposition and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what I did. I just used the epitaphs to fill in the blanks.
Baku is war chief in all but title.
And in this chapter, we're going to get a better view of Baku. He's mentioned in other chapters, but now we kind of get the chapters to where it's from his perspective. You kind of get into his mindset and his character and who he is as a person and how the wound that he received affects him on a day to day.
He oversaw the new recruits, assigned Askari to their post, and discussed battle strategies with the chieftain, among other duties. Despite his disability, Biruk relied on him too much. Baku came to Pamal to retire and raise his adoptive sons in peace, but his renown as an Askari elite had attracted much unwanted attention.
And you'll see this throughout the book as Baku starts to like travel places, how like he's known by name everywhere. He is a renowned Askari Blackguard. And that's one thing about it. Even though he technically shouldn't be using his magic, he is renowned for being gifted as a Blackguard.
In the lion's den, Chieftain Biruk sat at the head of the table in a large wooden chair, wearing hyena's fur across his brown skin. His head was bound with intricately braided dreadlocks, woven with gold and jewels that hung well down his back, with no crown to weigh them down. Each finger was adorned with rings that sparkled as he moved, while his golden hoop earrings stretched down to his shoulders.
So, and you'll see this with a lot of the chieftains throughout the book. They're kind of like, what's the word? Not flamboyant, but they're very expressive with how they dress and how they appear. Whereas, like, the war chiefs are more subdued with how they dress and how they appear, more or less. But the chieftains, the ones that you do see in this story, they are kind of kind of flamboyant with the way they dress and how they appear and how they make themselves appear to the public. And it's pretty much all for show. Because they are some of the richest members of the society, but it's pretty much just to show their wealth and their title. You know, you know how it is. How sometimes when people have money, they just gotta flaunt it.
It was an indication of wealth and status. Baku thought it was pretentious. Across from Baku sat
Gotta take that beanie off, man. It's hot already. California day. It's 9:30 in the morning. It's already like 80 degrees. Beautiful day out here, though. Can't complain.
the man who was the true war chief, Zahur. His disdain towards Baku was understood. He had been war chief for the kingdom of Woodland for years now. Despite having no interest in being war chief, Biruk still treated Baku like he should be in charge and leaned on him for counsel.
And we see the dynamics of the chieftain and the war chief. The chieftains are like the mayor, the government. They pretty much run the politics, the social things going on within the villages, whereas the war chiefs themselves are more like the sheriffs. They're the long arm of the law. They run the Askari specifically. And in this conflict right here at the beginning of this chapter, Baku's sitting at the table as if he's a war chief, but he's just a retired Askari elite. Like he has no authority in that power. But instead of going to his war chief, Baruch, the chieftain of Kamal, would rather lean on Baku because of Baku's renown.
It was an odd relationship between the men. Zahur protested Baku being so heavily involved in the affairs of the kingdom, but Biruk insisted. Zahur wore a cobalt blue dashiki trimmed with gold and silver. Styled to cover his chest like a cuirass, the sleeves were torn off to reveal his massive arms, which were covered in dark tribal ink. The symbol of the Askari was stitched in the left shoulder, and around each of his biceps he wore a simple gold-woven rope. In between the three men sat a map of Sol Galnis. Small black flags were placed on every kingdom except for Mokpont, which was south of Woodland. It was marked by a red flag. "We've secured many Askari for the trip to Mokpont this year," said Zahur. "How many youths are prepared to cross the burning sands?" asked Biruk. "In total only 5, however the other villages are sending their youth here tonight for the ritual." "Baku, are all the men prepared?" Biruk asked. "Yes," Baku said. "Word has spread among the other villages, and all elders will be in attendance." "Good, good. This will be a most excellent celebration. Any worries about the increase in outcast activity?" Zahur glanced at Baku, and Baku's nod said to go ahead. You have permission to do your job.
You see, that's the dynamic. Like, Zahur is the war chief. He's the one that's supposed to be running things. But it's like you have to look at Baku, who's sitting across from him, like, and Baku's like, man, go ahead, man, do your thing, bro. Like, it's not what I want, but it is what it is.
Our only concern is the presence of a few skull hunters lurking in the forest. They have been able to evade capture for now, but we doubt there will be any attacks on the night of our rites of passage.
Skull Hunter, that's going to come into play um, in this chapter. Well, we've seen the Skull Wearers in chapter 2. And then at the end of that chapter, we got to meet the Skull Hunter. And so we're going to get more of the Skull Hunters in this chapter as well. And that's pretty much it for the rest of the book. We won't see any more until like later installments of the Blackguard story.
Not even a skull hunter is dumb enough to provoke the wrath of the Askari on such an important night. Yes, yes, Biruk said. What of you, Baku? What of me? Will you be accompanying your sons to the training grounds? I will see them off, just as the other parents will be doing. The double doors to the lion's den burst open. Someone, breathing heavily, stumbled into the main chamber, followed by one of the door guards. Baku and Zahur both took a defensive stance, but relaxed once they realized who it was. We tried to stop him, but he flew right past us, the Blackguard said. Beatrice, what is going on? Biruk asked.
When coming up with characters and characters' names, whenever I had two characters that were father and son, I tried to give them similar names or a name where you can easily tell, oh, that's the son of this character. So like with Beatrice being the son, Baruch is the father. Both their names have an I and a U in it. So that was the similarity there. Baruch and then Beatrice. To make it seem like it's like a name succession type of thing. Like how a father would name his son Junior or his third son like the third or something like that. So that's the vibe I was going for. And you'll see it later on in the book as well, like with Akachi and Amadi. Akachi is the father and Amadi is the son. So I tried to just do that thing where you can obviously tell, okay, that's this character's son because he has a similar name, whether with the prefix or the suffix or both.
The young man was out of breath. He wheezed as he fought to draw air into his lungs. Father, Beatrice said between gasps. He then took in the two high-ranking Askari at his father's side and swallowed. Zahur had placed his sword back in its scabbard. Zahur, Baku, Beatrice took in a deep breath. You must come. Explain yourself, son, Biruk demanded. A skull hunter has Ru and Uzuma. Ru and Uzuma watched as the skull hunter's gaze swept over them.
Now, right here, we have a scene transition. In the book, these transitions are accented with a spear, an image of a spear that I had created for the book. It's not AI. And so um, it lets the reader know when they're reading it that we're switching a scene real quick. We're either going to a different place, switching the POV, or some time has passed. And that's the main reason why I wanted to put the spears in there. Because typically in most books it's done with like ellipses or some type of like swirly line or whatever. I forget what the term is called. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted something unique to the Black Art universe. The one thing that I wanted when creating this world was to make it as unique as possible, to make it feel as lived in as possible. So when you're reading the chapters, you're not just reading a story, you're immersing yourself in this Afrocentric fantasy world. And so in the audiobook, you don't get to see the spears. You just, wait for a pause and then he continues. But in the book, it's spears.
scoffed at them.
And I chose spears because spears are typically attributed to many different African cultures. It being one of the greatest type of weapons, a bow staff with a blade at the end, and two, just paying homage to the motherland. Like one of the main things I want to do with this book is to pay respects to where my people come from. Even though I hate to use that word identify, but even though I'm an American, Black American, quote unquote, African American, whatever you want to call it, uh, I understand that my ancestors and my forefathers who died for me to have the freedoms I have today didn't come from here. They came from Africa. And so, one thing I wanted to do outside of just creating something completely original was pay homage to the motherland to where my ancestors come from.
I'm surprised you beat my men so easily, he said. Looks like I'll need to punish them later. Uzuma wanted to run. There was no way they could defeat the skull hunter. There were 7 skulls draped round his neck, one for every kill. 2 of the skulls had an X carved on them. They had been other blackguards. With how easily he pulled away their weapons, Uzuma knew their fight was hopeless. Yet Ru's hand still glowed with the bright flicker of yellow boko. You think you can defeat me, little calf? The skull hunter said. Do you know who I am? I don't care who you are, Dreg, Ru said through clenched teeth. I'm not going down without a fight.
And you see, Uzuma is the more practical one. In his head, he's like, fuck, I'm scared, but I know I'm going to have to fight, but I want to fight. So we can run, I'm willing to run. Like, that's what Uzuma's process is. But Rue is just like, Man, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit, bro. We can run it right now. And he's probably feeling fear too. Another thing with having to dual perspectives is that we don't get to see Rule's internal thoughts in this moment, but you kind of get a feel for his character. You know, it's a fight or fight type of situation. One of the brothers is thinking, no, we need to find a way to get away from this dude. The other one is thinking, oh, I'm just gonna act because I don't want to give him a chance to take me down my back this time.
Uzuma saw something. Aoife and Beatrice from the corner of his eye. They prowled behind some bushes, ready to strike. Uzuma shook his head just as the skull hunter glanced over his shoulder. Aoife lunged at the outcast with his broken spear, but the skull hunter yanked the spear from Aoife's grasp and kicked him in the chest. "Get help!" Uzuma shouted, so Beatrice ran away. The skull hunter raised the broken spear to strike Aoife, but Rue blasted the weapon out of the outcast's hand.
And you see here, we see that. Let me explain this. Okay, so Beatrice is the one that comes to the lion's den and lets them know, hey, we're being attacked by a skull hunter, right? But we see right here in this scene that he's there with them when the skull hunters appear. So a lot of times when I'm writing, how I build my scene is um, I like to write it as if two things are happening at once, or we're seeing the same action from multiple POVs. I do that several times in the book. I don't know where I got this technique from, and I don't even know what it's called necessarily, but it's just something that I like to do when I'm writing. So I start off the scene with like the not the inciting incident of that scene, but I start the scene with the question or with the conflict, right? Oh, the homies is being attacked. We need help. And then I transition to showing you why they need help and what led up to the moment of Beatrice going to get the help. So you have the context. No, you have the issue or the problem first, and then you have the context afterwards. And I apologize if it's loud. My background is loud. I am on a public road, and there are trucks and vehicles and stuff passing by, and it is windy a little bit. So I apologize if the stuff in the background is too loud. So I can get a more professional mic that can tune out that stuff. This is the best I can do for the moment. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Essentially, I like to give you the answer first and then show you the problem after. That's the best way I can put it. Um, it's just something I like to do when writing. I don't know why or how I developed this habit. I haven't really read a lot of books that do this. I mean, some do go give you flashbacks and they'll go back to the start of something. Man, it's like all the cars want to come by when I'm talking. And, they'll go back to show you the start of something. But I don't know where I developed this technique and my writing. It's just something I started doing. Like, if you read my book, Tell Tony the Other Side 1, that whole book is like that. It's just a series of flashbacks that tell you the entire story. But anyways, back to Blackguard. Let's finish this thing.
Rue's boko had faded, and the strain of fatigue was clear on his face as sweat dropped from his head like rain. The skull hunter sneered as he faced Rue. "Overdid it there? All out of boko? Good. I think I'll kill you with my bare hands." Rue threw his hands up to protect himself, but Uzuma moved in front of him just as the skull hunter leapt in with a brutal knee strike aimed to shatter bones and pulverize flesh. Uzuma's heart thundered against his ribcage as he barely brought his hands up in time to protect his chest from the incoming attack. The outcast enhanced his strength with boko, causing his kicks to connect with more force. Uzuma blocked, but he could feel the weight of each strike getting heavier. Rue leapt over Uzuma and kicked the outcast in the chest. He went for a punch, but the outcast grabbed Rue's
Ooh,
wrist and
almost
struck
tripped
him in the
there.
chest. Rue flew backward and slammed into the ground. A bright red gauntlet materialized in a flash of thought over the skull hunter's fist. Spikes peeked out of the glove like red icicles. Uzuma reached out and called the boulder onto Rue's chest. The skull hunter's fist slammed into it. The attack was so strong it knocked the breath from Rue, but at least the rock protected him from death. Uzuma launched the boulder upward. It struck the skull hunter in the face, knocking him off balance.
We see now that all that levitation that Uzuma was doing in the beginning has come in to help. because now he's taking this boulder and he's levitating it with ease and he's using it to attack the skull hunter.
As the outcast grabbed his bloodied nose, Uzuma brought the boulder down with full force, striking the outcast in the back of the head. Shocked and irritated, the skull hunter let out a scream and fired a blast of blood-red boko at Uzuma. It hit him in the chest like a massive fist had punched him, crushing the air from his lungs as he hit the ground, thick globs of blood spewing from his nose and mouth. The skull hunter drew his scimitar. His mouth twisted in a snarl as he marched with methodical cruelty toward Uzuma. Baku and Zahur rode their zebra.
Now we're switching back to, so we see the fight between Uzuma and the skull hunter. And we see that regardless of what they were trying to do, the skull hunter just had the advantage. So now we're seeing Baku and Zahur coming to essentially help them before it's too late.
Into the Nguk forest, flanked by other Askari. The animals moved with speed and grace that allowed them to easily navigate the maze of branches and vines. Smaller animals scrambled into the shrubbery and bushes for safety. Although Baku could travel faster with his boko, he would risk aggravating his wound. The same wound he had received when the boys were younger, on that day when he saved them from death and took them in as his family. The same wound that left him with shards of an unknown element inside of his body. The same wound that poisoned his boko, causing him to age rapidly if he dared use it. He never once regretted saving them, but that night, that moment, had cost him dearly. He focused on the now, hoping to find his sons alive and well as he desperately raced to find them.
And now you see Baku really sees Uzuma and Ru as his sons. He doesn't see them as his stepsons or as his adopted sons. He sees them as his sons, as if they came out of him, even though all he did was rescue them from their village being destroyed. But those are his sons for all intents and purposes.
He could hear fighting nearby, and someone screamed out in pain. Baku stopped his zebra while Zahur stopped next to him. "I heard it too," Zahur said. "That was man's scream," Baku said. He peered through the source.
So, you remember when Uzuma hit the outcast with the boulder and he screamed? That's supposed to be that same scream. Like I said, I don't know why I developed this habit, but I like writing scenes sometimes that are happening around the same time or giving you the problem first and then going back and showing you the question. That's the best way I can explain it. I can't remember what the term is called. I'll look it up later, but that's essentially what I'm doing. So now you're seeing that while they were fighting the Blackguard, Breachers made it back. He told Baku and Zahur, and now they're on the way. And during that fight, they had got close enough to hear what was going on.
The noise and saw a red flash, then glimpsed a curved sword gleaming in the distance. "Give me your spear," he said, to which Zahur threw the weapon out to him. One loud snap of the reins, and his zebra charged forward. As he approached, he summoned Boko to his eyes to magnify his vision. With a simple revealing spell, he saw that 3 outcasts were on the ground. 2 were injured, and the third lay dead with a spear protruding from his chest.
Now, despite his wound, he's using the revealing spell, and he pierces through the jungle to see the scene.
Baku recognized Aoife, wounded on the ground, grasping his chest. Next to him was Ru. He wasn't moving. A 4th outcast loomed over Uzuma with the scimitar raised to strike at his throat. Baku infused his boko into the spear and launched it through the air. The weapon hummed with blue boko as it shot forward and crashed through the back of the outcast's head. It skewered his face, shredding through nerves and muscles before it lodged itself in the dirt at Uzuma's side.
I like that scene. When I wrote that, I was like, ooh, kind of greedy right there. Baku don't give a fuck. But, I mean, like, to be honest, the main thing about this book, I would say, outside of the story, is the violence. I wanted it to be graphic and greedy, and I wanted to give people a treat because it's not like Game of Thrones where you have like sex and political intrigue and people betraying one another left and right and everybody trying to get one up on the other person. It's not like that. It's very straightforward. It's very, hey, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and then everything that happens in between. And so, it's more akin to Lord of the Rings mixed with like Dragon Ball. You know what I'm saying? And so That's what I was going for. Or like Naruto mixed with like Aragon or something like that. Like it's very simple in that regard. But it still gives you enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick this up. I'm gonna read this because I'm having fun reading this. And that was my whole thing. Was make a story that I would want to read. Make a story that would be fun to read.
Pieces of bone and brain.
And it shows you how powerful Baku is too. Like he takes the spear and fuses it with his boko, and then hurls the speed at such a strength and speed that it pierces through the score hunter's skull from the back and comes out and lands on the ground. And to just show you how effortlessly he did that. So it's supposed to give you a glimpse of his power, so that way you can see what he does. And this is the only time you actively see Baku use his power throughout the whole book.
Showered across the ground. The Skull Hunter staggered a few steps before falling to the ground lifeless, only a hole where his face used to be. Baku jumped off the zebra and quickly surveyed the surroundings. Blue boko sizzled around his clenched fist. The two outcasts that were still alive lay on the ground, shaking, their hands lifted above them in surrender. Zahur and the company of Askari arrived and apprehended the two outcasts. He immediately pulled down the scarves hiding their faces, and it was apparent that they were still young boys. Their tattered clothes had been patched dozens of times over. Baku let the light of his boko fade away. Zahur pulled the necklace from the skull wearer and examined it. "Such a shame," he said, tossing the necklace away. "Such a waste, being an outcast. I'll take these ones back to the village so they can be tried for their crimes." Aoife, still gripping his chest, rose to his feet. Baku reached out and placed a hand on Rue's chest. The boy gasped for air and opened his eyes. A wave of relief washed over Baku. "I thought you were dead," he said. Rue coughed up a spout of blood and laughed. "It'll take more than a few outcasts to take me out."
And I think that's what people are going to love about Rue is that he's not a coward. As arrogant as he is, he's not a coward. He's not afraid. And he's with this shit. He's ready to get active, especially for his brother. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't have nobody else. And that's one of his defining traits. Is that as long as Uzum is there, Rue is down the ride.
Boko flowed from Baku's hand into Rue like a thread of silk. The blue, transparent stream was visible for only a moment before disappearing. "You can't!" Rue grabbed Baku. "Your wound!" "It's okay. I don't need to use much Boko to heal you. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." At that moment, Rue's bruises seemed to just fade away. He breathed in deeply, and suddenly he was up on his feet again. Baku pulled Uzuma to his feet and healed his wounds as well. "Thanks," he said, staring at the body of the dead skull hunter. "I'm glad you're okay, son," Baku said. "Most don't live to speak about facing an outcast." Baku embraced his sons with a hug, and they embraced him back. "Let's not waste time here. Tell me what happened on the way back." Uzma and Aoife shared a zebra as they rode back with the company of Askari. Baku helped Rue get on the same zebra as him. Together they rode back to the village of Pamal with the two outcast prisoners in tow.
There you have it. Chapter 4. So the main thing about this chapter was showing you Baku's wound. That's why it's called Wound of Heroes. Showing you his strength and what he's willing to sacrifice, even though he has this wound, and showing you his relationship with with Uzuma and Ru. Because this is one of the main pillars of the book is the relationship between these three characters. And I had to build that and establish that early, given the events that go on throughout the rest of the book. Because Uzuma has his trauma, Ru has his pride, and that affects both of them. And Baku, he also is prideful, but he's in the sense that he doesn't want people to look at him like he's some cripple. He's still capable, even with the wound. He just knows that if he uses his magic, if he uses his Boko, that it will cost him a lot. So even if he uses it sparingly, and you'll see that in the next chapter, chapter 5. But if you like Blackguard Way of the Askari, or if you don't like it, you haven't read it yet, make sure you copy it. It's on Amazon. You can also get it on my website, www.rscobb.com. This has been another chapter review of Blackguard Way of the Askari. Be on the lookout for the next one. And until next time, folks, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.